Hello everybody, welcome back to Dominions 5. It's been a while since I've been able to record this game, and today we are going to start recording the Tournament Finals series. So if you'll recall, not too long ago, I played a game as Late Age Man in the first round of this tournament that Lucid set up. That game was an 8-player game, and the top 2 finishers moved on to a finals game. And I came in second. I sort of diplomacied my way into a second place in that game. And now the finals are being played. I really wanted. So, as the way the tournament works is there are 2 players that have advanced from each of the previous games, and there were 6 games in total. 4 games that were for more advanced players, and 2 games that were a bit larger for newer players. So there are a total of 12 players in this game. The age was determined randomly, and it is an MA game, middle age. And also, we also had some nation bans and things like that. So most of the cancerous nations were pretty much banned. Now, I wanted, and there's a draft order, I wanted to play as MA Man. I know it's a little bit memey just because it's kind of my thing. I always play the humans. I really like that nation. But most importantly, what I really wanted to do is I wanted to do a build with a Titan pretender. I wanted to do, I was thinking like a dormant Titan with MA Man. You could do with a TOS of War. Here, let's actually click on things here. So, I wanted to do something with most likely like a TOS, right? That would be the thing. So you take this guy, maybe you give him Astral 4, Dormant. I don't know what the pass would be, whatever you can. There are a few builds, right? Do Dormant. You can get some pretty nice scales, and if this guy comes online, after year 1, you can, he can craft a few missing key items. You've got nature and air forging with your other guys. And he can be basically invincible against armies. Can be a lot of fun, and I just like the human nation in general. Unfortunately, during the draft phase, a bunch of other nations were selected, and the nations that are in the game, I don't remember exactly the order in which they were selected, but I'll tell you the nations that are in the game. I was pretty low in the draft order. So we had Pythium. I'm going down the list here. Cetis, Vanheim, Jotunheim, Vanarus, Bandarlog, Ind, Nabaa, and Atlantis, and Ys, and myself, which so I don't end up playing MA Man. But the reason is that if you look at these nations, we have a lot of astral power. We've got Pythium, Bandarlog, and Ind, which are just like pure astral nations, just S1 everywhere. So it would be a terrible idea to run in with not an awake or whatever, a dormant Titan to that. First of all, they could just soul slay him, and with a year 2 communion or whatever, they could even just unless I got up to Astral 7 on him, which would be so expensive, they could also just magic duel him. That's really bad. Plus, we also have Jotunheim. A giant nation is going to be pretty decent. A super combatant is going to rely on a lot of protection, mostly, especially that chassis. If he comes swinging with giants with big two-handed axes, he might just kill him outright. So, anyways, that kind of turned me off of that whole strategy. So instead, I decided to play a slight variant on the Titan idea, and we are going to be playing as MA Ulm. Now, I really like this nation as well. MA Ulm is a pretty unique nation, and I've played it before, and I might have some videos of it already on the channel. I'm afraid to go back and look at the stuff that I recorded a while back. It would probably be very cringe inducing. Um, so let's do a quick overview of MA Ulm as a nation. So MA Ulm has absolutely ridiculous human units. Um, and mainly this is because they have insane protection. So you have the sort of cheap version with 19 protection and the fancy version with 23 protection. These units only cost 10 gold. Now you look at this and you say, but 38 resources, it's impossible to recruit these. Yeah, but all of your mages give you 10 resources for free in your province. So, like, resources are basically not an issue for Ulm. So all these melee units basically have 23 protection. They have very low defense, but it doesn't really matter because nothing short of a two-hander is even going to scratch you. And as a human, they actually have extra HP. Most humans have 10 HP. These guys all have 12. Their morale is also pretty decent. However, their big vulnerability is their magic resistance. They have lower than average magic resistance. We have a few different weapon types to choose from. We've got battle axes, which is a slashing weapon. We've got a flail, which is a blunt weapon, but it has 2 attacks per turn, as well as a +2 bonus to attack versus shields, but the damage is much less. It's 16 blunt versus 22 slashing. We've got a maul, which is just a 22 damage blunt weapon. And we also have a pike, which is an 18 damage piercing weapon, but length 5. So pretty good built-in repel check. Now we've got 2 variety with shields. One has a hammer, which is just a pierce blunt one-handed weapon. And then we also have one with a morning star, which has a +2 attack to shield and 17 damage. There's a few other things. We've got a little war dog, which is actually underused, but could be pretty useful sometimes. It is undisciplined, so you can't script it, but it's a really cheap unit with 15 protection. Like, for just garbage chaff, I could definitely see scenarios where this could be used. I mean, it's got the vulnerabilities that it's an animal and other things. It's got, like, almost no magic resistance, but still. The issue is that it's 7 gold, and these guys are just 10 gold, so most of the time you're just going to recruit your regular units. We have 2 ranged units. We have a crossbowman, but be careful. This is a special unit. It has an arbalist. The arbalist doesn't fire every 2 rounds. It fires every 3 rounds, which is actually really bad because it reduces your DPS basically just by, reduces it by I want this to be as clear as possible. It reduces it by 33%, right? Because let's say in 6 turns, a regular crossbow would have shot 3 times, but this crossbow will only have shot 2 times. Actually, reduces it by 50%. Okay. However, the damage is higher on each bolt. You get a 15 piercing damage attack. So if you're fighting a high protection type of unit, then with this unit, you might actually be doing damage versus no damage on regular crossbows. So in that case, it's much better. So it's selectively very good or very bad. So you have to be really careful with these guys. Note that it's a crossbow unit with 17 protection because, guys, this is Ulm. We have a ton of protection. There's another crossbow unit, which is the Sapper. So this is a regular crossbow with only 11 piercing, also 17 protection. However, it has a siege bonus of 5. This one's also a bit more expensive, 20 gold. Depending on your unit composition, this could be a decent addition because, we're just humans. Extra siege strength can be really, really powerful. Like in terms of gold per siege strength ratio, this is actually one of your better units because if you look at any random infantry here, if we look at, is it under strength? Yeah. So for 10 gold, we typically get 1.2 siege strength, but here for 20 gold, we're getting 6.2 siege strength. So this is excellent. If you just need gold to siege something down, this is a fantastic unit. Really, I mean, it's an amazing unit. Plus, it happens to be a crossbow, so like, why not? It's a crossbow with 17 protection. You can even have it on the front lines. So, often overlooked unit in Ulm's roster. Now, we also have a heavy cavalry unit, the Black Knight. This is misleading, the resource cost, although it does mean in the early game it's hard to recruit a lot of them because you don't have a lot of mages. But remember, resources are not a big bottleneck for Ulm. So 45 gold, 23 protection, not super high defense because we're using a Morning Star, which penalizes our defense a little bit. But this is up there in terms of quality, in terms of heavy cav. Very, very high protection, big old kite shield, a lance, just a very strong heavy cav unit in general. Finally, we don't have a sacred, but we have the Guardian. The Guardian is a 20 gold, slightly buffed melee guy. It is buffed in that it has higher morale. It still has bad magic resistance, though, slightly more hit points, slightly better base stats, and it has a very special weapon, the Black Halberd, which is length 3, does a boatload of damage. It happens to be magic damage, and also it has Bane of Heresy, which does extra fatigue damage on sacreds and gods in an AoE. So this is a sacred killer. This is a very, very good unit at killing sacreds. If you're neighboring somebody who's like doing a meme sacred build, in most matchups, Guardians will just shred them. Very strong unit. Now, for fighting regular stuff, maybe it's more expensive and you don't need this, and you could do fine with the regular infantry. But there's often in a game, at least one of your neighbors is going to be relying on sacreds, and so you're probably going to want to be recruiting these anyways. Anyways, that's the unit lineup. In terms of the commanders, we don't actually have a regular scout. We just have a spy, which is, I guess, a good thing, but, you have to get some indie provinces to recruit your scouts. We've got a bunch of copies of this commander. They're all 80 leadership. They all have, like, various weapons, which is not... we don't really need this variety. We've got a Black Lord, which is just a heavy cav version of the commander. And then we've got a regular H1 priest, pretty cheap, but okay if you needed an H1 priest. We've got our mage. There's only one kind of mage, this guy. So Earth 2, Fire 1, randoms in Fire, Air, Earth, and Astral. And we'll get to this in a moment, but I just want to go over the different units here. We have a Mason, so you can actually upgrade your forts up to castles, which is very rare in the Middle Ages, so that's pretty cool. This unit actually also has a pretty decent siege bonus and castle defense bonus. So again, very good at sieging is Ulm. We have a commander version of the Guardians here. The Lord Guardian also comes with a Black Halberd. This one also has Halt Heretic 3, which is like Awe against sacred units. And then we have 2 cap-only mages. We have the Black Priest, who is our Holy 2. This is our highest priest, with a slight chance for random paths. And he has Inquisitor, which means that it's very good at preaching out enemy dominion. And finally, we have the Priest Smith, which is Fire 1, Earth 2, and Holy 1, no random paths. Now, just looking at that lineup, it can seem a little underwhelming, but there's a lot of stuff going on behind the scenes that you need to be aware of that really make Ulm stand out. So let's start by, let's just pick a few abilities at random. So first of all, Smith's research not affected by drain scale. So our mages have this mundane researcher trait, which means that you can take drain 3 for free, which kind of goes with the roleplay and the theme for this nation. They're sort of like anti-magic in some ways, which is ironic because they have no magic resistance. But this means that you take drain 3 always when you're playing as Ulm, and it doesn't penalize your research at all, which is great. It also gives you a bit of extra MR when you're in your own dominion. So that's a thing. So that's an extra 3 scales, which is really handy. The other thing, like I mentioned, is that these units, these mages, give you resource bonuses, which means in combination with forts producing 25% more resources, all these high resource costs on these units are basically not super relevant. You're always going to be limited by gold, basically. And perhaps most importantly, we have Forge Bonus 2 on these Master Smith. This means that any item this guy forges, the cost will be reduced by 2 gems. This is cumulative with a hammer, which means that if you make a hammer, then the cost in gems will be reduced by 4. That means that a 5 gem item will only cost 1 gem to forge. This is insane. It is almost game breaking in some circumstances. Think of all the amazingly good 5 gem items that you can make. I mean, almost for free. It's ridiculous. So obviously, lightless lanterns comes to mind, or owl quills in the early game, right? So your research as Ulm, in theory, could be completely through the roof. But there are a ton of really powerful 5 gem items. And this is just potentially game-breakingly good. So this is one of the cornerstones of Ulm. Now, the other thing is Ulm has access to a couple of national spells, and the most important ones, well, there's a couple of them. You get like a special summon, like an angel, which is, most people don't like it. I think it's better. I think it's not too bad. It's 25 earth gems, and it gives you a flying chassis that's about 60 hit points. Comes with like decent gear out of the box. It also has some anti-sacred shenanigans. You can kit him out. It's not a mage or anything, so it can't buff itself, but it can be a half-decent thug unit. And you're crafting items for really cheap, right? So you can kind of customize them and craft a lot of stuff for them. They're not terrible. It actually takes a bit of work to, like, it takes a lot of boosters to summon them on your astral randoms. But anyways, the other important spell that we have is we have Iron Darts and Iron Blizzard. Iron Blizzard is just a much bigger version. But you can see here number of effects 3+, here number of effects 30+, and what it is a shotgun of magic damage, armor piercing bolts. It's like a crossbow bolt, but you get 30 of them, times 2 damage versus magic beings, armor piercing magic damage. This is absolutely devastating. Sometimes even when the opponent has arrow fend up, the enchantment 6 air spell. But if they don't have arrow fend up, this is absolutely devastating. It's so devastating that it also can kill all your units, so you got to be careful how you script things. Although if you have enough precision, generally it's not gonna, it's gonna do a good job against the opposing army. But especially in the early game, or if you're fighting a small opposing army, you might actually have a bunch of friendly fire. This is an extremely devastating spell. I think the only other really relevant national spell is you have a version of anti-magic here, which is kind of like needs to be spammed. Its MR negates easily entire battlefield, but Earth 3 is easy because all our mages are at least Earth 2, so you summon Earth power, then you can spam this a little bit. It's anti-magic for a nation that doesn't have high astral paths. Speaking of paths, you might have noticed that there's absolutely no magic diversity. You're going to pray for a couple of air randoms to get owl quills, or perhaps astral randoms to start making astral items. But that's it. That's the only diversity we have. The rest is just earth and fire. So this nation, as you can imagine, is going to be very strong sort of in the early game because their units are very strong. It'll be very strong in the mid game with those evocations, and then tends to fall off in the late game. It takes a lot of effort to fix magic diversity. And all your mages are earth mages, which is like okay, but things like Blade Wind and whatever just become irrelevant in the late game typically. So that is an issue. Another issue is that because you don't basically have very few, because your mages, they're not super expensive, they're not super cheap either, and they're not sacred. You have a good economy, but you do tend to run out of money because nothing is sacred. so the upkeep costs tend to be pretty high. Okay, so, and we get a bunch of Earth Gems as our cap only, like we get 5 Earth Gems at our site. So there's a few things that you can do as Ulm, but remember I wanted to do like a thing with Titans, and so what I decided to do, okay, so let's get one thing straight. I keep reading or hearing people talk about like doing Ulm with an awake pretender. I'm sorry, personally, I do not get it. That makes zero sense to me. I mean, of course, look, if you're playing like a tiny game like a Blitz with like 3 people, then an Awake is always a good choice. So don't get me wrong. There are like game setups where Awake expanders make sense. With literally make any one of these units, like any one of these melee units with 2-handers out of your capital, you'll expand perfectly. Like it's so easy to expand with these units, guys. The only indie type that can even hurt these guys is maybe barbarians, maybe heavy cav. Even so, they're going to do chip damage. Like a barbarian does 22 damage, this guy has 23 protection. He's going to do chip damage, against 12 hit points. Expansion is super easy. There's a lot of different ways of doing it, and you can choose that, but you do not need an awake expander. All right, that I definitely don't get. You could go for a Titan for sure. It'll be really easy to kit them out. That is a totally legit strategy. Now, I'm not doing that because, again, I didn't. If I could have gone for a Titan, I would have done it on man because that's what I wanted to do. You could definitely do a rainbow just to fix your magic diversity. That is also a very strong option. And I decided to kind of combine the two. And specifically, I went for an Allfather. Now, what's interesting about the Allfather is he's a Titan, but he has his extra paths only cost 40. So you can kind of rainbow him. And Ulm has a lot of design points because you can go drain scales. And there's a few other things here. So he gets at natively a lot of paths that are important to me for a few reasons. So first of all, we need magic diversity, right? So already Air Astral Death is nice because we don't have access to that really. We have Air 1 and Astral 1, but we if we really want to get into those paths, we need higher paths. Now, so we're going to add more paths to this in the future. We have to think about what kind of bless we want. Now you're saying, but we don't have any sacreds. Well, we have the Priestsmith. This is a sacred unit. So what kind of bless is useful for a mage that's going to spam a huge crossbow bolt shotgun? So if you're thinking precision, then you are correct. That is relevant. So that's one thing that's nice about this chassis. It does have air built in. So with Air 4, we could do something like a bit of precision and far shot, right? Shooting even further. Something like this. I forget the exact details. Now, having too much precision is actually bad because having too much precision is going to concentrate those bolts so tightly that you're going to waste them because 30 bolts going into something is going to kill anything. So you don't want them to be too tight. So if the opponent comes close to you with an army of small units, you do not want to be firing a super precise bolt spread of bolts. You want to kind of be shooting them in a wide cone. But with far shot at maximum range, it is going to diverge a lot. So you want to have precision for those circumstances. I forget the exact build. We'll see it when we load up a first turn in the next episode. But I think I did maybe I got minor shock resistance, something like that. Anyways, air is definitely relevant. Now, we'll load up actually here. Let me load up the actual pretender, so we'll see. You can see exactly what I did. Assistant branch manager Mike. So this was my build for this game. So again, the scales order, productivity, heat 3, because unless you want to die to murdering winter, you need heat 3, growth 3, and then drain 3 and misfortune 2. He's imprisoned, and here are his paths. So he has air 4. So that I actually did go for a ton of precision. Interesting. So I decided not to go for far. Oh no, I did go Farcaster. Sorry, I didn't. Far shot doesn't apply here. I'm sorry. Yes, of course. Far shot is not relevant. It is Farcaster that you want in this case because it's a mage. It's not. He's not shooting arrows. So in that case, I did go for 3x precision because otherwise, with Farcaster, the spread is just too wide at long range. It does mean that this is a problem fighting close range swarms of units. It's not super efficient, but it means at long range it's quite devastating. Minor shock. Then we got Earth 4, and we have 2x reinvigoration. We took Death 4, and we got 4x undying. I took a bit of blood just to have, this is just for magic diversity, and also so we can make that Earth booster that requires blood and Earth cross paths. And I picked up some extra HP on those mage priests, and we got some nature for, again, magic diversity and poison resistance. So this is a pretty solid kit for our mage priests, which it's not that they're the most important thing in the game, but, well, how do I put this? We are going to rely on them for our strategy, right? This is what we're going to try to use to win us the game. So what are the things that are going to kill them? Well, they're like human mages, right? So there are a bunch of nations here that can do foul vapors. So we need to have poison resistance. And it's really hard for us to cast it. So let's just get it in the bless. Having 3 more HP plus another 8 HP is going to mean they're not just going to randomly accidentally die. Reinvigoration is key because even though they're earth mages and they're going to have some in earth power, we're fighting a lot of nations that do have death access. So you could end up fighting, for example, against rigor mortis, but you can also just end up fighting in unfavorable weather conditions, right? Where we're going to have strong heat in our dominion. We might be facing strong cold. So this is just a solid kit specifically for the mage priests. However, all of this is an excuse to get air death, because the plan here is the following. It's, as Ulm, we are going to be researching evocation anyways because we want to get the Iron Blizzard. But you know what else is at Evocation 6? Wailing Winds. One of the most overpowered spells in the game. And at Death 4, Air 1, this is something that our Pretender can cast. And our Pretender isn't just some, like, rainbow mage. He's like an actual, legit Titan chassis. So the idea is whatever happens in the first 3 years, we might, fight a war, we might not. But once turn 36 comes around, or whenever the Pretender comes around, he's going to be rolling around with our main army, absolutely devastating opponents left and right with Wailing Winds, which honestly people are not going to expect coming from Ulm. So that's the plan from the outset. And yeah, so that's going to be it for this episode. I'm going to... so I'm always going to be ahead in terms of the actual gameplay compared to my recording. All right, sorry, I had somebody at the door just there. But anyways, that's going to be it for this first episode. And I'll see you guys in the next one where we'll go over our expansion strategy and start going through the turns. See you guys then. Take care.